Looter shooters, completely addictive to those who play them and completely perplexing for those who don't. Whichever side you may fall on, it's hard to argue against how popular and influential this genre has been for the better part of a decade by now. And while there are still several strong contenders on the market right now, it seems to be becoming more and more rare for a new looter to try and make its mark. And when they do try, well, we won't talk about Anthem. And so, due to the thinning of the herd, so to speak, there's really only so many looters left to pick from, at least the ones that are still supported and are receiving regular content and other additions. And with limited options always comes greater discourse. It's hard to get everyone to like one game's direction, and because of this, recently you've seen huge numbers of people migrating to and from these different games. Diablo 4, launched just recently, started off with some rave reviews, yet the more recent seasonal and balancing updates have left many disgruntled and not wanting to play. Destiny 2, easily one of the biggest and most successful looters there has ever been, is currently going through one of its most tumultuous periods in history, and despite the latest expansion Lightfall drawing in record numbers of players, many of the game's more veteran and hardcore audience are feeling progressively less enthused with the direction the game seems to be going in. So maybe you find yourself in a similar boat to the people and situations I've just described, or maybe you just like to hear about cool games. Whatever the case is, today I want to present everyone with what I believe is the most attractive looter shooter alternative in 2023. A title and franchise that has been a recognizable name for quite a long time, but in the recent years has slipped away from the spotlight a bit, particularly when it comes to coverage and exposure from major media outlets that might otherwise be covering similar games. But with the resurgence the game has had over the past 18 months and the upward trajectory it's heading on leading into next year, I want to lay out why, if you're seeking that urge to dive into a new or alternative looter experience, this might be the game for you. And so today, we're talking about The Division 2. A few quick things I want to go over before we dive into details here. I make this video with zero intention of bashing or putting other games down. I deeply adore this genre and I root for any new or old contenders to find success on the market. However, like I stated, the options have lessened quite a bit in the recent years, and in my view, The Division 2's ongoing support and content has been wildly under-recognized by the wider gaming industry. So you never know the impact a video like this could have, and if I have a hand helping even one person find their new interest and gaming obsession, then that's worth it to me. Additionally, I will be comparing The Division 2 with some other looters throughout the video. Once again, this is not with the intention of throwing shade at other games. It's simply to provide an accurate reference point for how Division 2 handles some aspects of its looter structure that might differ a bit from the competitors. You'll likely hear me referencing Destiny 2 the most out of anything, and that's simply because it's the other title that I played the most. Before The Division ever released, Destiny 1 was my main game, and like I mentioned earlier, Destiny 2 is one of the most prolific looters right now. So chances are there might be more than a few players of it checking this out. Though I have also dabbled with the likes of Warframe, so I'll try and vary up my references. For starters, let's go over a quick briefing of what exactly The Division 2 is for anyone who may be uninitiated. The Division 2 released back in 2019 and is a third-person cover-based looter shooter. It features an open-world design recreating Washington, D.C. in stunning detail and accuracy, and sees you taking on various objectives and prompting exploration of the world, interspersed with handcrafted main missions, and a variety of instance content later on in the endgame. The Division 2 deeply leans into its RPG roots and features what should be a familiar system to most, if not all, looter games, your build. And if you like numbers and you like fine-tuning your exact playstyle, this game definitely allows you to go all out, as there are basically an infinite number of ways to set up your build, tweak stats, the whole deal. So that's the gist, but let's get into some specifics. Why do I think The Division 2 is the ultimate looter alternative on the market right now? Instead of trying to tackle every aspect of the game, I figured it might be effective to lay out a simple pros and cons list, talk about a few things I think the game does well, or at least very different compared to similar titles, as well as point out what isn't so standout. Let's start with the pros, and I think the first is progression. I think regardless of which looter game you're talking about, universally, one of people's biggest hesitancies about getting into a looter well after it has launched is that feeling of being behind. There's been years and years of content added, there's a mountainous gear score climb to make, I won't even know where to start without watching a million guides. Now, I'm not going to pretend that The Division 2 does this absolutely perfectly or that there's not some of a curve to learn, but from my perspective and what I've heard from a good number of other people is that it's immensely more friendly in this regard compared to some of the alternatives. For example, Division 2 has never redone its tutorial. Now at first that might sound bad, but in reality, it's just because it's never had to. Unlike Destiny 2, no content is has ever been vaulted or removed from The Division 2, so you can seamlessly begin where everyone else did back in 2019 and go through the mechanic learning and story progression from there. And unlike Warframe, which to my recollection has undergone a few restructures as far as its new player experience and basic progression structure, Division 2 has just always been incredibly solid in that regard. Beyond that, once you do reach the endgame, Division 2 is one of the rare looters that has no gear score. The minute you reach max character level and beat the campaign, you can hop into some quick endgame content sessions and within an hour or less have an adequate endgame build. Now that's not to say there isn't a lot of min-maxing and optimization to be done from there, as well as complementary progression systems to delve into, but you're not going to have to dedicate weeks of your time just trying to catch up to everyone's level just to play the cool content. And for many, I think that's a big relief. Another point I think many will appreciate is the Division 2's monetization structure, or should I say lack thereof, with titles like Destiny 2 shifting more and more into the realm of what is basically a subscription model, where back in the day you just had to pay for the base game and then what, $20 or $30 per expansion? Now the game is free, air quotes, which is certainly nice to allow for people to try out the game, but you have to buy every season in order to access its content and stay up to date, and the annual expansions are now what, $50 I believe? So it's basically a $100 game a year to play. Others, like Warframe, have been free to play from the start and have never tried to hide that fact, in that they don't charge for new content, but are much more aggressive when it comes to microtransactions, with big bundle prices and sometimes time-gating new characters or other additions, I want to say. Division 2, I think, just strikes a really consumer-friendly middle ground. You buy the base game, commonly on sale for less than $30, you buy its one expansion, Warlords of New York, also frequently on sale, and that's it. You own all of the content. The game does still receive new seasons and content, but it's all free for anyone who owns that aforementioned expansion. Each season does have a paid premium track to its reward pass, however it is entirely optional and contains nothing exclusive besides cosmetics. All new exotics, gear, weapons, it's available for free. Beyond that, while the game does have a cash shop, it's very rarely used, which is honestly surprising to me given how much of a no-brainer it seems like, but I would say 90% of the items in there are stuff that was added back at launch, and over time they've occasionally added a few paid outfits in there, but always strictly cosmetic. The game has no pay-to-win elements or otherwise locked features. And the last big pro I want to point out, which is something I think everyone wants to hear when talking about a looter, content variety. The Division 2, at its endgame, has a crazy amount of varied stuff to jump into. Now, I'm not going to sit here and claim that every piece of content is awesome, perfectly balanced, equally rewarding, although we will be talking about a big redesign coming next year in a few minutes. However, there are dozens upon dozens of hours and adventures to be had here. Do you like a good grind, pushing your build to the limits? The Summit has a 100-floor skyscraper you can heavily modify to your difficulty liking. You want something shorter? Countdown offers intense 8-player action in 15-minute sessions. You want PvP? Conflict offers 4v4 game modes. The Dark Zone offers unique PvPvE action. You like relaxation and exploration? You can modify the open world's difficulty and go out to explore the wild number of puzzles and secret areas out in the world. Do you want to be able to switch genres entirely? You can go and play Descent, a standalone roguelite mode baked right into the game's design. Point is, there is absolutely something for everyone, and there is enough to keep you invested and interested for quite a long time. And with the game having no gear score, every activity is rewarding and worthwhile in some capacity. You're always earning more. To flip the conversation, however, The Division 2 is not a perfect game, no game is. A few pretty agreed upon shortcomings of its current form. Compared to the likes of Destiny, let's say, The Division 2 could be viewed as a bit more casual. Now, I argue that there is still plenty to do and work towards. I mean, I play it all the time, but without there being a gear score or that constant injection of new items to grind for like Destiny has, you can definitely find yourself in periods with less to do. One striking similarity the game also has with Destiny is its PvP. The Division 2 has PvP. I personally love it, have since the first game. That said, it is without a doubt flawed and lacking the support that it really needs. This is due to a multitude of factors that are too long to get into in this, but if you're looking for that super balanced, highly competitive PvP scene, this ain't it. Although I do contest that there's still a lot of fun to be had. And one of the most glaring issues as of late, update consistency. There's a very long backstory here which I won't get into, but the extremely abbreviated version is that the game basically changed hands of development teams back in 2021. This change included a drastic reduction in developers, as well as the new team didn't have prior experience on the game or its engine. This incurred a 15-month content drought while they took the time to make new content and learn the inner workings of everything. This is why you likely hadn't heard about the game for such a long time. However, as of last year, content has resumed, and now Division 2 follows a standard seasonal update calendar that many looter fans will be familiar with. The caveat is that because this development team is still newer and they continue to work on and modify code they didn't write and don't fully know the history behind, consistency for the game is unfortunately not a perk that we currently have. Destiny, Diablo, Warframe, any looter typically runs like clockwork. Every season comes out right on time, there's frequent patches, all of that. Division 2 doesn't have this luxury, at least at the moment. The time in between seasons can often fluctuate. Just recently, Season 2 got pushed back by a month. Sporadic issues have arisen, like when the game was offline for 2 days while issues were being sorted out. This new development team has a lot of passion, but the game unfortunately does not have the immense amount of funding and resources that some of these other big titles do. That said, that doesn't mean the dev team isn't doing their best to bring some big change. Let's quickly talk about the road ahead for the Division 2, because despite the rough patches it's endured to get here, we're currently on our way to one of the biggest shakeups the game will have had in years. The game is currently in the swing of Year 5 content. Year 5 Season 2 is set to drop in just a few weeks here, and thanks to a roadmap we got at the start of the year, we know about a major update that is on the way next year. Year 5 Season 4 will be delivering an all-new DLC package, with new open-world zones and main missions set in Brooklyn, New York. And to go along with it, the team is hard at work on an entire redesign to the endgame. Seasons 2.0 will arrive, which has minimal details thus far but promises to majorly overhaul the seasonal formula. The game's creative director has cited goals like making every endgame activity unique and rewarding in its own way, giving you reasons you would want to go and play each different piece of content. We know a new item type is being added, which is sure to change up the build making and add fresh new layers. There's teases that endgame staples like specializations will be changing, hints that PvP could be impacted. There's a lot, right? And this is easily the largest and most ambitious update the game will have released ever since its Warlords expansion that came out all the way back in 2020. So it's all very exciting. And if nothing else, it goes to show the effort and passion that is continually being put forth behind the scenes. They're working with everything they've got to try and ensure that the Division 2 continues to evolve and innovate. The DLC, Season 4, and this entire overhaul is roughly slated for Q2 2024, and so whether it's now or in the months leading up to that, if you need a reason to get into the game and learn what it's all about, the opportune time will be before that update drops. And, my friends, that is all I have for you today. Once again, I love this genre. The intention here is not to diminish the success and accomplishments and uniqueness of all of these titles, but variety in life is important, it's essential. And personally, I do think the neglect to cover the Division 2's ongoing support in the media is quite tragic, so if nothing else, I hope this video informed you, and best case, convince someone to try the game out. If you did enjoy the video, found it helpful, entertaining, whatever, do consider clicking that subscribe button. It helps out more than you know, and it will ensure that you stay up to date on all my coverage of the Division 2, so it's a win-win. Let me know your thoughts on this whole discussion, whether you're a Destiny player, Warframe player, Division player, or you're not even a gamer. What's your take and outlook on the looter genre right now, and what do you think the Division 2 is doing better or worse than some of the others out there? That's going to do it for me today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.